Hi, I'm odorless. At my sister's wedding, my mother slapped me across the face because I wouldn't give up my penthouse for her perfect daughter's new life. She looked me dead in the eye and said, "This is for the family." That moment didn't just sting my skin, it burned through every lie they ever told me, because this wasn't the first time they used family as a weapon. And that night, I didn't cry. I smiled. Ever wonder what it looks like when the one they pushed aside decides not to stay quiet anymore? Before we dive in, what time are you listening and where from? Drop a comment. I want to know who's out there, who's ever been told to give everything just to be considered family. I showed up alone. It wasn't because I didn't have anyone to bring, it was because I didn't want to put anyone through that. The Bellagio Garden Hall sparkled under soft amber lights, lined with imported orchids and waitstaff dressed in tuxedos like it was a Hollywood set. It was the kind of place you reserved when you wanted to make your wedding look like royalty, even if you weren't. I wore navy. Not black, not red, just a simple navy dress that hit below the knee. No flashy heels, no designer clutch, just me. Understated, quiet, present. I walked past the line of valet-parked Range Rovers and Audis and slipped into the cocktail area, where music played so softly it was like they didn't want to disturb the illusion. My sister Isolda was glowing in her fitted white lace gown, already surrounded by cameras, friends, and relatives who kept calling her princess or perfect. I stood to the side, like I always did, the other daughter, not the one people toasted to, the one who co-signed the college loan, paid the deposit on this very venue, and was conveniently forgotten when the thank you speeches were made. That had always been my place, not unloved, but useful. Across the room I caught my parents watching me. My mother smiled, lips stretched too tight. My father gave a nod, the kind you'd give to an employee who'd just arrived late. I smiled back politely. No warmth passed between us. Minutes later, as I stood near the wall sipping sparkling water, my mother glided over, her sequined shawl catching the light like a net meant to trap attention. "Odorless," she purred, taking my arm lightly. "Can we have a quick word? Just a little family thing." Her voice was sticky sweet, the kind she used when she wanted something. I followed her toward the terrace near the fountains. My father joined us halfway, his expression unreadable. He didn't say a word. My mother began the performance. "This day is such a blessing," she said, clasping her hands together. "Isolda has found such a promising young man, and we just feel, well, this could be a turning point for everyone." I said nothing. She looked into my eyes with fake affection and dropped the real bomb. "We were thinking your penthouse. It's just been sitting there. You're always traveling for work, and you're alone. Wouldn't it be lovely if Isolda and Oliver could start their life in a home like that?" My breath caught, not from shock, but from confirmation. I had known it was coming. Still, hearing it said out loud like it was a favor to me? "I beg your pardon?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. Her smile didn't falter. "Think of it as a wedding gift, from one sister to another." I turned to my father. He didn't flinch, just looked out at the fountains like we were discussing weather. "So, you all rehearsed this," I said quietly. "You pulled me out here to ask for a property I bought, maintain, and live in, because I'm alone?" "Odellis," she said sharply, her tone flipping in an instant. "You're being selfish." There it was. "No," I said, lifting my chin. "The answer is no. That place is mine." And that was the moment her mask cracked. Something in her snapped. "You ungrateful girl!" she shouted. Heads turned. Guests nearby froze mid-sip. And then, it happened. The slap came without warning. Her palm struck the side of my face with the kind of force you don't expect from someone in heels and diamonds. My head tilted slightly, but I didn't stumble. The sting was real, but what stung more was what followed. Isolda turned her back. Oliver blinked like he didn't know where to look. A couple of cousins gasped, but nobody stepped forward. Nobody said a word. My father finally muttered, "This isn't about you." "Of course not." I straightened my posture, lifted my gaze. and smiled. Not a loud, angry smile. A quiet one. Like I'd just read the final line in a book I should have closed a long time ago. I reached for a champagne flute from the nearest tray. Held it. Didn't drink. I walked through the hall, past people whispering and pretending not to look. I made my way out to the valet, head held high, heels clicking like punctuation marks behind me. In the car, I sat for a moment, letting the silence settle around me. My cheek still throbbed. I reached into my purse and pulled out a scarf, soft, cream-colored, embroidered by hand. My grandmother's. She'd once told me, "Never let them take your dignity. You can give them your help, your patience, your time, but never that." That night, I didn't sleep. I didn't cry. Instead, I opened the bottom drawer in my home office where I kept documents that mattered. The original deed to the penthouse. And right beside it, sealed in a thick envelope, was the second copy of my grandmother's will. She had left something else to me. I held that scarf for a long time that night, like it was the only thing real left in my life. I didn't sleep much that night. The scarf stayed in my hand long after I kicked off my heels and curled up on the couch. I didn't even bother to change out of my dress. I just sat there, staring out at the city lights bleeding through the glass. Somewhere down there, people were toasting to love and beginnings. But in here, my own home, it was just silence. A kind of silence that wrapped tighter than any slap could ever sting. When morning came, it wasn't with the warmth of sunlight, just gray, stillness. My phone had 5 missed calls from an unknown number. I didn't check the voicemails. I rose slowly and walked to the bathroom. The mirror didn't flinch. My cheek still held a faint flush, right where her hand had landed. I didn't cover it. I didn't even touch it. Instead, I reached for a hair clip and twisted my curls back like I was heading into battle. In the kitchen, I ground the beans by hand. Something about that motion always calmed me. The hum of the machine, the smell of the roast, it anchored me. I leaned against the counter, mug in hand, staring past the terrace. The city stretched endlessly, glittering beneath layers of smog and ego. According to my parents, I didn't belong here. "That place isn't really yours," they'd say with a laugh. "You just hold it until someone who deserves it comes along." Last night, they'd tried to decide for me who that someone was, and I was done letting them. Still in my bare feet, I walked back to my bedroom and opened the built-in drawer in my closet. It was an old habit. When things got loud in my life, I looked for the quiet places, the places I stored things no one else ever asked about. Tucked beneath a folder of birthday cards, most unsigned, some just mailed from random cities with "Love Mom and Dad" in barely legible ink, I found it. A cream envelope, thicker than the others, my name written in slanted cursive. I sat on the edge of the bed before I opened it. My heart didn't race, it just slowed. I knew what was inside. I'd known for years. But something about last night, the slap, the eyes that turned away, the line from my father, "This isn't about you." All of it carved a space I couldn't ignore anymore. The paper inside was soft, worn at the edges. My grandmother's handwriting hadn't changed, even toward the end. Still elegant, like her, still sharp. "Odalys, I know you never asked for anything. That's exactly why this is yours. The penthouse stays in your name. Full ownership. They may talk. Let them. You showed up. And yes, the savings are real. I hid them for you because I knew they'd try to take. Love isn't loud. You gave it quietly. Never let them shame you for being steady." Underneath her note was a notarized copy of the second will, dated 6 months before she passed, sealed, witnessed, leaving me the penthouse outright and a separate savings account they never touched. I had kept it all these years. I never filed it, never needed to. I thought, maybe things would change, maybe they'd see me without needing to be forced, but last night taught me better. I folded the will carefully and slid it back into the envelope, then walked to the office nook near my bookshelf. I unlocked the small safe tucked behind the row of architecture magazines and pulled out the rest: the original deed to the condo, bank statements, documents Grandma had given me when she was still lucid. I placed them in a folder marked Property Personal. Then, I picked up the phone and dialed the only person I knew would answer without asking questions: Ms. Green. She'd been my grandmother's attorney for over 15 years. Never loud, never flashy, just methodical, and fierce when needed. When she answered, her voice was crisp. "Oh, Dallas, I've been expecting your call." I exhaled into the phone. "I'd like to review something." "Do you have the original?" "Yes." "Then let's schedule a review. Tuesday morning, my office. I'll have the notary present." It was that simple. No dramatics, no explaining what happened last night. I think she knew. Or maybe Grandma had told her to expect this. I didn't ask. I didn't need to. I spent the rest of the morning organizing everything: copies for the bank, originals for Ms. Green. I worked slowly, deliberately, like I was tracing the edges of a new future, one I'd known was mine but hadn't yet claimed. Around noon, as I was slipping another document into the folder, I caught sight of an old photo in the bottom of the drawer. It was bent, the corner curled up from years of neglect. Isolde and I, maybe 10 and 13. She had her arms thrown around my neck, grinning. I was holding a snow globe we'd found in a thrift store during one of Grandma's winter visits. That was the winter she moved into the penthouse for a month while her house was being fumigated. I'd offered to let Isolde stay with me when her college apartment lease fell through. No questions, just an open door. My mother had called the next day. "That's what family's for," she'd said, "to lean on each other." Back then I believed her, but those same words echoed differently now, used as a blade, not a bond. They hadn't leaned, they had taken. And then, when I didn't hand over more, they turned away. I zipped up the folder, placed the scarf inside, and locked the drawer. Tuesday couldn't come fast enough. I stayed up later than I should have, reading Grandma's note over and over until the handwriting blurred. The city outside my windows buzzed, as if untouched by the chaos in my blood. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just sat. By morning, my routine kicked in like muscle memory. Monday meant a staff review at 10 and project updates by noon. I pressed my hair flat, pulled on my navy blouse, and left my condo with the same expression I'd worn since I first made partner at the firm: composed, efficient, untouchable. At the office, familiar greetings floated past me as I stepped off the elevator. "Odalys, how was the wedding?" "Did your sister finally tie the knot with that guy? What's his name?" I smiled without showing teeth. "It was eventful," I said, then kept walking toward my office. Nobody needed the details, and I wasn't offering them, not when I still had the imprint of that night sitting somewhere between my shoulder blades. I dove into reports, but even the numbers felt wrong in my hands. I couldn't shake the sense that something had shifted, not just emotionally, but physically, practically. Around 1:45 p.m., as I reviewed lease revisions for the Wilshire project, my phone buzzed. I recognized the number, my condo's HOA office. "Hi, Ms. Valen. This is Deborah from the building management. Just calling to confirm, your sister's name is being added to the access file today, right?" My pen froze mid-sentence. "Sorry, what?" "The name Isolde Valen? It came through this morning with a request to update your unit's resident list. Says she's moving in." My voice dropped an octave. "She's not. I didn't authorize that." "Oh," the woman on the line hesitated. "It came through what looked like a formal submission with a digital signature and, well, since it mentioned you were out of town recently, we assumed—" "You assumed wrong," I said, quieter than I felt. "Please don't make any changes. Remove her name immediately." "Understood, ma'am. I'll log it now." I hung up and stared at the screen in front of me, but all I could see was the look on my sister's face the night she smirked while Mom slapped me, the kind of smirk people wear when they think they've already won. The rest of the day moved slowly. I went through meetings, offered updates, signed papers, but my mind was already home. By the time I pulled into the garage at my building, it was dusk. The automatic lights flicked on as I walked past the concierge desk. I nodded at Alan, our evening guard, who waved politely without realizing my stomach was in knots. Inside my condo, I set my purse on the table and walked straight to the digital panel by the entryway. I pulled up the access logs for the past 24 hours. There it was. 2:03 p.m. Side elevator. Key fob duplicate detected. I hadn't given anyone a duplicate, not recently, but suddenly a memory hit me. 4 years ago. Isolde crying in my guest room after another breakup, me offering her my extra robe, her saying, "I made myself a spare, hope that's okay. You know, in case of emergencies." I'd forgotten all about it, and apparently, so had she, until now. I moved quickly from room to room. Everything looked in place. Nothing stolen, nothing obviously touched. But when I opened the drawer where I kept spare keys, mailbox, gym, bike locker, one was missing. The mailbox key. The same mailbox where I'd just tucked Grandma's envelope back the night before. My chest tightened, but I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I picked up my phone and called Raina. She answered on the second ring. "Hey, you okay?" Define okay. There was a long pause. Then her voice dropped. "Listen, I wasn't going to bring this up because I didn't want to stress you out after the wedding, but I think you need to see this." "See what?" "Check your sister's private Instagram story. Someone sent me a screenshot. It's your building, Odellis. Your lobby." I felt the silence before I spoke. "You're sure?" "I'm looking at it right now. Picture of the marble columns and the front desk. Caption says, 'Welcome to our new home.'" She tagged it to close friends only, but she forgot I was still on that list. I hung up without another word. I opened my own account, scrolled through the burner profile I used for real estate scouting, and sure enough, it was there. Posted 5 hours ago, my lobby from the side entrance, same columns, same painting in the background, her tone unmistakably smug. I sat at the dining table, the whole room silent around me, and I let the betrayal wash over like a slow burn. She wasn't just planning a move, she'd already tried to make one, not with a conversation, not with a phone call, but with a quiet request to management and a key she'd made years ago without telling me, and now she was claiming it, publicly, as hers. I didn't react, didn't text her, didn't alert my parents. I didn't need more noise, I needed clarity. Instead, I took screenshots of everything, the fob log, the missing key photo, her story post, and attached them to an email for Ms. Green. Subject line, "Urgent follow-up, will and property access." Then I made myself a cup of Earl Grey, stepped out onto my balcony, and sat in the cool air as the sky bled into a haze of orange and violet. Let them think I was asleep. Let them think I was hurt, licking wounds in silence. Because while they moved fast, I was already moving too. But I moved smarter. I let them think I was sleeping. The next morning, I made a call they weren't expecting. By 7:45 a.m., I was downstairs in the lobby, standing across from Mr. Hatch, the building's security manager, who looked at me like I'd just handed him a stack of legal landmines. "We don't usually get requests like this," he said carefully, reading through the documents I placed on the counter. "You're sure you want to proceed?" I didn't blink. "Yes, effective immediately. No one enters my unit unless I escort them in personally." He nodded slowly, then typed something into his computer. "This'll trigger an internal security memo, and we'll need to swap out your unit's lock codes. Do you want a fob override?" "No overrides," I said. "Remove all previous secondary fobs, every single one." His mouth tightened. "You'll get pushback. Families don't always take well to boundary enforcement." I zipped up my coat and met his eyes. "Then it's a good day for boundaries." By noon, the new locks were in place. I'd updated the biometric system on the door, face recognition only, and had security cameras synced to my phone. It wasn't paranoia. It was protection. You don't leave your door cracked open when someone's already walked in uninvited once. I spent the next hour at my dining table organizing paperwork for the afternoon meeting, cease and desist draft, grandmother's notarized will, proof of property tax history under my name, even the deed to the condo, copied and tabbed with color-coded notes like I was preparing for trial. Because maybe I was. At 2 p.m. sharp, I walked into Ms. Green's office downtown. She greeted me in her usual firm but warm tone, her eyes already scanning the stack of documents I placed before her. "You move quickly," she said, flipping through the pages. "That's good." "I don't have time to wait for common sense to kick in," I replied. We spent the next hour reviewing everything, adding notarizations, cross-checking property rights, and finalizing a cease and desist notice addressed directly to Isolde. Ms. Green slid it into an envelope, sealed it, and handed it over to her assistant. "She'll be served by end of business today," she said. "And if she contests, we escalate. With what you have, this doesn't go well for her in court." I exhaled. "Thank you." Ms. Green paused. "Odellis, may I ask, what's your end goal here?" I considered that for a moment. "Peace," I said, "but if not that, at least distance." I left her office just after 3:30, the winter sun dipping lower on the horizon, casting long shadows across Wilshire. I stopped by a small bakery on the way home, got myself a warm croissant and coffee I didn't really need, but somehow I needed to hold something real, something mine. By early evening, I was home. I'd barely taken off my coat when the call box buzzed. "Valen residence," the concierge's voice came through, hesitant. "There's a couple here, an older man and woman. They say they're your parents. They're quite emotional." I closed my eyes. "Tell them access is denied." A pause. "Yes, ma'am." Not 2 minutes passed before my phone lit up. "Dad?" I let it ring once, twice. I answered on the third. "Odellis," he said, voice carefully composed. "We didn't know things were this extreme. Can't we talk like family? This isn't how we do things." I waited. "You've always been the calm one," he continued. "You're letting lawyers get between blood." I leaned against the kitchen counter, fingers curled around the edge. "Did you say that before or after you and Mom told me I should gift my condo for the wedding?" I asked. "Before or after you watched Isolde post about moving into my home?" He sighed. "Look, maybe that was out of line, but you're blowing things up over a misunderstanding." "No," I said quietly. "You just misunderstood who I've become." Then I hung up. The silence after that call was heavier than I expected. I didn't cry. Not at first. I poured myself a cup of herbal tea and sat out on the balcony, watching the city flicker to life as dusk settled in. But then I looked down and saw it, on the small table beside my chair. The scarf. Grandma's scarf. The one I'd folded away neatly in the drawer 2 nights ago. I must have grabbed it absent-mindedly while organizing the files. I reached for it, pressing the soft wool to my cheek. And that's when it broke. The tears didn't come all at once. They started in the chest, like something giving way, like something collapsing. I curled my legs under me, held that scarf like it could bring back someone who truly saw me, and whispered into the evening air, "If family means sacrifice, why am I the only one bleeding?" The city didn't answer. It just blinked back, indifferent. I didn't answer their calls the next day, but someone else showed up, and they brought papers. I was sipping coffee by the window, watching the early sunlight edge across my small patio garden, when the doorbell rang. The tone was sharper than usual, a buzz that didn't wait to be ignored. Through the peephole, a man in a pressed navy jacket stood with a leather case tucked under his arm. I opened the door a sliver. "Odellis Bram?" "Yes." "I'm a legal courier with McAvoy and Steele. I have a delivery requiring signature." I signed. He handed me a sealed envelope, nodded, and disappeared down the hallway like he didn't want to breathe the same air too long. Inside, on thick legal stationery, was a demand letter. In tidy, aggressive language, it stated that I was unlawfully occupying property intended for the future family of Isolde Braham and her husband-to-be. It went on to claim that I had interfered with legitimate inheritance distribution and needed to vacate the premises within 7 business days or face litigation for fraudulent occupancy. The letter was signed, my uncle's name, clear as day. Uncle Harris, my mother's younger brother, the one who wore too much cologne and loved calling himself a real estate shark. I kept reading. Attached was a photocopy of a new will, a revised inheritance document dated 2 months before Grandma's stroke. This one named Isolde as the sole heir to the condo. The paper even had what appeared to be Grandma's signature at the bottom. I just sat there, staring at it. It didn't make sense. Grandma hated mess. She always believed in leaving things clean, organized, and unmistakable. Even her spice rack was alphabetized. There was no way she would have left something so crucial undocumented, especially not without saying a word. Still, my stomach twisted in that old, familiar way. The one I hadn't felt since the Christmas I opened an envelope from my parents that said, "We contributed to Isolde's down payment. Hope you can understand," while I sat across the table eating off-brand pie. I folded the papers, slipped them into a folder, and took a breath so deep it hurt. By noon, I was at Ms. Green's office. She didn't waste time with small talk. "Let me guess," she said, scanning the envelope I handed her. "They're trying the alternate version of events strategy." She leafed through the letter and the attachment. Her brow arched. "Well," she muttered. "This wasn't even filed through probate." She held up the fake will. "And I can tell you right now, this isn't her signature. It's good, but not that good." I swallowed a dry laugh. She'd signed everything already, hadn't she? Ms. Green looked up. Her eyes softened. "She updated everything with me directly, Odalys. Weeks before her stroke. She asked me to be the notary. She didn't trust your parents." I nodded slowly. "I remember. It was a Saturday in late May, the last time Grandma came over for tea. She was moving slowly that day, but her mind was as sharp as ever. She sat on my couch, rubbing her hands together. Her knuckles had grown thin and paper-like. "You don't need to fight for a seat at the table anymore," she said, staring at the lemon wedge in her teacup. "I know what they've made you feel like all your life." I said nothing, just sat beside her as the late sun spilled gold over the floor. "And see, she reached into her purse, shaky fingers but purposeful, and handed me an envelope. Inside was a copy of the deed transfer. Signed, notarized, dated. No ambiguity. "I couldn't change how they saw you," she whispered, "but I could make sure you'd never need to prove your worth again." I'd folded that paper and tucked it in my safe, next to old birthday cards and the only photo I had of her laughing. Back in Ms. Green's office, I wiped at my cheek quickly. "So what now?" She smiled, not smugly but with calm assurance. "Now we respond." An hour later, she helped me draft a response to the letter. We attached a copy of the original notarized deed, the real one. Then I added a personal touch, a yellow sticky note slapped right on top of the fake will before we sealed the envelope. 2 words, just enough. Try again. We mailed it straight to Uncle Harris's firm. No phone call, no drama, no invitation to argue. I walked back to my condo that afternoon with the late sun brushing the tops of the buildings. The world looked the same, but something in me had shifted. I wasn't holding my breath anymore. Link to next chapter. I thought they might back off after that, but I forgot. Isolde doesn't lose quietly. The next morning, I was sipping lukewarm coffee in my kitchen, the blinds barely open, when the intercom buzzed. "This is Mr. Riley, HOA president. Could you come down to the front office, Ms. Marin?" His voice was neutral, too neutral. I set my mug down slowly, heart not racing, but settling into that all-too-familiar bracing calm. When I stepped into the lobby, there she was, Isolde. Clutching her binder like it held scripture, lips pursed into something between concern and performance. "Good morning, Odalys," she said sweetly. We were just hoping to clarify a few concerns. Mr. Riley cleared his throat. We've received a formal complaint. It alleges that you've made unauthorized alterations to your balcony, violated the neighborhood noise ordinance, and, endangered local pets with unfamiliar substances. I blinked. Substances? There's mention of suspicious activity involving repellent sprays, he mumbled, reading directly off the printout. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Isolde looked at me with mock sympathy. We just want what's safe for everyone. It's not personal. I looked between them. Would you mind stepping upstairs with me? I think it's better if I show you something. The elevator ride was silent, except for the gentle hum of the floor indicator. Isolde tried to strike conversation with a half-laugh about community standards, but I didn't respond. Once inside my unit, I led them past the kitchen and down the hall to my study. I unlocked the drawer, pulled out a thick, tabbed folder labeled in my handwriting, "They think I don't notice." I placed it flat on the table and opened it without a word. First tab, photos, time-stamped security cam stills, of Isolde's husband Davis, leaning over my gate at midnight with bolt cutters. Another photo, him scanning the smart lock panel on my front door. Mr. Riley's face twitched. Second tab, audio transcript of the barking complaint that supposedly came from my unit last Tuesday. The HOA's own logs showed I'd submitted an out-of-town travel notice for that day, backed by my GPS logs and the building entry keycard record. I hadn't even been home. Third tab, emails. I tapped my screen and mirrored it to the TV. Highlighted text popped up from a forwarded thread, doctored by none other than Uncle Reese's assistant. The metadata showed file creation at 11:17 p.m. on his office account, 2 days after my grandmother's death. The edits contradicted original timestamps in my possession. Mr. Riley rubbed his jaw. Isolde's face had paled slightly, but she tried to speak. That doesn't prove... I cut her off gently. I'm not here to argue, Isolde, just clarifying, since you said you wanted things handled properly. I closed the folder and slid it across to Mr. Riley. Would you like a copy? He adjusted his glasses and nodded slowly. Yes, I believe that would be wise. He hesitated near the door. Ms. Marin, would you consider attending our next community meeting just to ensure transparency? I nodded once. Absolutely. I believe in community. That night, I didn't sleep much, not from worry, but from focus. I stayed up, organizing every file, every printed email, every image. I wasn't going to walk into that meeting to argue. I was going to present, quietly, clearly. The following evening, the community center's side room buzzed with soft chatter. Folding chairs scraped against the linoleum floor as neighbors filtered in. I spotted the Parkers, who once claimed I brought in the wrong energy. Mrs. Kingsley from Unit 5A, who once said to my face that I was the daughter who went off script. And of course Isolde, front row next to Mr. Riley, lips already curled in that same brittle confidence. He opened the meeting briskly. We'll begin with the recent HOA complaint and allow Ms. Marin to respond. I stood, held up a manila folder. No speeches, I said, placing it on the table. Just facts. I clicked my remote. The slides lit up behind me, each one clean, time-stamped, annotated. Video clip, Davis reaching over my balcony. Screenshot, the original HOA document, then the doctored one, both displayed side by side with metadata tags. Chart. All logged complaints tied to my unit, mapped alongside dates when I was provably out of town. There was no need to dramatize it. I didn't accuse. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't even look at Isolde. By the time I reached the last page, an official letter from Ms. Green confirming the original deed and contesting the inheritance forgery, no one was speaking. The silence in that room had shifted. It was no longer suspicion. It was realization. Mr. Riley cleared his throat. This matter is closed, permanently. Ms. Marin, on behalf of the HOA, we sincerely apologize. Isolde rose abruptly, knocking her chair over. This is ridiculous, she muttered, gathering her bag. You're all just blind to what she's doing. No one responded. She turned and walked out. The door clicked shut behind her. I stayed behind as others filtered out. Mrs. Kingsley gave me a nod. The Parkers avoided my gaze. But Mr. Riley approached quietly. "If you ever consider running for a seat on the board," I smiled faintly. "Let's see how long the peace lasts." I walked home in the quiet, the air cool, streetlights flickering gently over my path. I hadn't yelled. I hadn't shamed. But I'd told the truth, and this time it had landed. They'd just finished pretending I was the problem, pretending they had the upper hand. But I wasn't the same woman they once played like a fiddle. That night, I went home and opened a bottle of water, not wine. I wanted to stay clear-headed. I stood by the sliding glass doors of my condo, watching the sky go from bruised lilac to deep ink. The HOA meeting had ended hours ago. Isolde had stormed off like a child denied dessert. And me? I hadn't said much, just enough. I was pulling my hair into a loose bun when my laptop chimed with a new email. Subject: "You need to hear this. They said it behind your back. You deserve to know. Maxine. I hadn't spoken to my cousin Maxine in over a year. We'd grown apart, especially after she moved to Seattle. But she was always the quiet one at gatherings, the one who listened more than she spoke. I clicked the email. There was no message, just a single audio file. I hesitated for a second, then pressed play. At first, I heard glasses clinking, someone laughing in the background, then my mother's voice, clear and casual. "We'll get her to sign over the penthouse, make her feel like she's ruining the wedding if she doesn't." Another voice, Isolde's. "Just guilt her. She's always desperate for approval. She folds if you make it feel personal." Then came Aunt Cora. "She won't fight back. She never does." Laughter followed. Not cruel cackles, just careless amusement. The kind of laughter people use when they don't even consider the person they're mocking to be real. I sat still. Not a single muscle moved. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I hit play again and again and again, until the rhythm of their words felt like a bruise under my skin. That Saturday there was a brunch for extended family, one of those things I usually skipped, but not this time. I woke early, showered, pulled on a simple navy dress and tied my hair back. No statement jewelry, no bold colors. I didn't want to perform. I just needed to show up. I arrived at my aunt's place at 11:08. The parking lot was full of familiar cars, cousins, uncles, distant relatives I hadn't seen in years. The moment I stepped inside, Aunt Cora beamed like she hadn't been caught on tape planning emotional extortion. "Oh, Odalys, so glad you came. We weren't sure you'd feel comfortable." I said nothing, just brushed past her and walked toward the dining area. My mother spotted me from across the room. She walked over, arms open like some benevolent matriarch from a Hallmark movie. I didn't hug back. I simply nodded once and moved to an empty seat at the main table. Conversations buzzed around me, half gossip, half catching up. I waited until everyone was settled, until plates had been passed and mimosas poured. Then I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone. I placed it on the table and tapped play. The laughter cut short. Forks paused midair. Glasses froze halfway to lips. Their voices filled the room. Mom, Isolde, Aunt Cora, every word. When the clip ended, no one spoke for a beat. Then, clink. A fork dropped to the floor. My cousin from Florida stared at me, wide-eyed. My uncle, the one who used to say I was ungrateful for not doing more for family, stood up slowly. "You said this about your own daughter?" he asked, his voice low but firm. No one answered. Aunt Cora opened her mouth, then closed it. Isolde wasn't there. Apparently she'd decided brunch was beneath her. My mother glanced around the room, her mask faltering. "Odalys, sweetheart, you have to understand. We were under pressure. Weddings are expensive and you've always had more than the rest of us. We were just trying to—" "Don't," I said, calm as still water. "No one here needs an explanation. The truth speaks loud enough." Another cousin quietly slid her chair back and left the table, shaking her head. Her husband followed. The room stayed hushed, like everyone was waiting for a script that no longer fit. Then Uncle Wade, who once called me emotionally cold for not inviting the whole family to my graduation, cleared his throat. "I didn't know," he said softly. "I judged you. I'm sorry." I met his eyes. Didn't nod, didn't smile, just held the moment between us. Eventually, I stood, slid my phone back into my bag, and walked out. No dramatic flair, no lingering glances, just a quiet end to a chapter they never thought I'd read out loud. The room had emptied out in stunned silence after I played the recording. Not one excuse could change what they'd heard with their own ears, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't chase an apology. I didn't need one. I spent the rest of that weekend at home, quiet, cleaning, watering my plants, letting the stillness settle, letting it remind me who I'd become. By Sunday afternoon, the sun had dipped just low enough to tint the windows with gold. I'd just set my mug down when there was a knock at the door. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened it, Carter, my sister's new husband, stood there. His shirt was untucked, his face drawn. Not the polished man from the wedding photos. He looked older, worn down. In his hands he held a manila folder, slightly bent at the edges. "I'm sorry to show up like this," he said, "but I need to talk to you. It can't wait." I stepped aside without a word. He entered slowly, glancing around like he didn't quite belong. We sat across from each other in the small living area. I didn't offer him anything, and he didn't ask. He opened the folder and slid it across the table toward me. I didn't know, not until the brunch, and even then I didn't want to believe it. I looked down. Inside were printed screenshots of text messages between Isolde, our mother, and even Aunt Vivian. "We'll get her to sign, just keep the pressure. She's too proud to walk away mid-wedding prep. That's our leverage. Once the deed's transferred, we're done." Page after page, plans, jokes, gloating. They were so confident I wouldn't fight back. They didn't even bother hiding it. Carter exhaled slowly. "They used me to help push you. They told me it was for family unity, that you were being difficult, that all you ever did was hoard what wasn't really yours." His voice cracked just slightly. "I signed a witness form for that gift of property letter. I thought it was ceremonial, just a formality. Now I see I was a pawn, and you were the target." I didn't move, didn't blink, just watched him quietly. There was no pleasure in seeing him unravel, but there was clarity. He reached into the folder again. This time he pulled out a copy of their prenup. And then, "I saw this." He pointed to a clause, highlighted in yellow. It read, "The condo located at 2028 Garden View Lane shall be listed as future marital asset, pending post-nuptial transfer under family gifting agreement." I looked up. "She listed my grandmother's condo as a marital asset?" He nodded. "Even before your wedding?" "She told me it was something your mom had promised, that you were just holding on to it, that you knew it would eventually be part of the family trust." "And you believed her?" "I believed I was marrying someone honest." The silence stretched. I didn't interrupt. I wanted him to sit with that. "I came here to say, I'm filing to remove it from our prenup," he added, "and I'll testify if needed. I don't want anything tied to this." I finally leaned back, resting my hands on my lap. "Good," I said calmly, "because I already filed a cease transfer injunction. Last Thursday." He looked surprised. "You knew?" "I've known something was wrong since before the wedding, but I needed proof, and now I have it." Carter slumped slightly. "I married the wrong woman." Then, after a pause, "But I'm trying to do one right thing." He stood slowly. I walked him to the door. He paused just before stepping out. "You may not believe this," he said, "but I always thought you were the strong one. I just didn't realize how much they resented that." I didn't answer, just opened the door. He stepped out into the fading daylight. No dramatic goodbye, no apology wrapped in excuses, just silence. I closed the door gently behind him. Then I walked back through the quiet condo toward the shelf in the corner. picked up the small framed photo of my grandmother from her 70th birthday, the one where she wore her turquoise brooch and that sly smile like she always knew more than she let on. I sat down with it in my hands, and I said, for the first time out loud, I didn't let you down. That night, after Carter left, the silence in my condo felt different, not empty, just full of space that finally belonged to me. I stood by the kitchen sink rinsing my teacup, the city lights flickering through the window behind me, when my phone vibrated once on the counter. I almost didn't check it, but something made me reach over. One voicemail. No name, just the number I knew by heart. I stared at it for a moment. Then I tapped play. My mother's voice drifted into the room, soft and slow, as if she were cradling something breakable. "Odalys, honey, I think we've had enough drama, don't you? It's time to let this go. Just come home. We'll talk. You don't want to tear the family apart, do you?" There was a pause, then a sigh, almost gentle. "We've all made mistakes. Let's move on." And just like that, the message ended. I stood there a long time, not moving, not blinking, not because I was swayed, but because I knew what that kind of softness meant. It wasn't love. It wasn't regret. It was control, dressed up in maternal concern. The same old tune. This time I didn't sing along. I played it one more time. Let every syllable sit with me. Then I deleted it. The next morning I slid on my jacket, picked up my keys, and drove. Not anywhere urgent, just somewhere. It wasn't until I turned onto Birch Avenue that I realized where I was heading, my old neighborhood. The house I grew up in sat at the end of the block like it always had, white shutters, cracked driveway, the same wind chime that clinked softly even now. I slowed as I passed, keeping my foot light on the brake. A woman I didn't recognize stood on the porch watering plants, probably the new owner. For a split second, I considered pulling over, just to walk up and knock, just to see it again. But my hands stayed on the wheel. I kept driving. I didn't need to see inside that house. I'd memorized every room years ago. I remembered the feeling of standing on the front step, age 12, waiting for my mom to open the door after school, wondering if today would be one of her good days, hoping maybe, just maybe, she'd ask me how my math test went, or whether I'd eaten lunch, or how I was feeling. She never did. Back then I thought if I just gave more effort, more patience, more love, they'd finally see me. Not as the backup, not as the helper, but as a daughter. I kept chasing that hope through birthdays, graduations, breakups, until there was nothing left to hand over that they hadn't already taken. That ache used to make me bitter. But today, it made me calm. I took a right at the next light and headed toward the overlook. Grandma used to come here when she wanted quiet. Not the tense kind, but the kind that let you hear yourself again. The wind was cooler up here. Late afternoon sun laying golden streaks across the hillside. I parked, grabbed the envelope from the passenger seat, and walked the short trail to the edge. The city spread below, small from this height, like a model set, neat, distant, quiet. I sat on the wooden bench overlooking the view, unfolded the letter. Grandma's handwriting was the kind that made you feel like you were being held, clear, slow, deliberate. Some people build families, Odalys, others survive them. You were never broken, you were just never praised for being whole. That is their blindness, not your flaw. I let the words settle deep. The breeze tugged gently at the corners of the paper. I folded it back, slid it into my bag, and smiled. Not a triumphant smile, not a smug one. Just peace. A long breath filled my chest and released without strain. I used to think staying silent meant surrendering, that if I didn't fight I'd be invisible, and for a long time, I was. Even when I spoke up, I was only heard as background noise. But silence, when it's a choice, not a sentence, becomes something else entirely. It becomes clarity. I didn't scream. I didn't tear anyone down. I didn't chase their approval. I just stopped playing the role they wrote for me. I didn't burn the bridges. I just stopped crossing them. And maybe to them, That's betrayal. But to me, for the first time in my life, I called it freedom. I stood up slowly, the wind teasing the edge of my scarf, and looked out over the city once more. What do you call it? When love demands silence. And you finally choose to speak?